Well, surprise, surprise, surprise. This is me, comedian George Wallace, the new Mr. Vegas. I'm here with you tonight. I'm famous. But let me tell you something. Your host tonight, Joseph Jaffe, he's not famous. He's not famous at all. But that's all we can do for you tonight. That's the best we can do. You know, Joseph is like Jon Stewart wannabe. He's like a Howard Stern wannabe. He is not famous, but he's your host, okay? Maybe he'll do good tonight. This is what you paid for. This is what you get. So, ladies and gentlemen, maybe you want to show him some love. Please welcome the not-so-famous Mr. Joseph Jaffe. Make some noise. Make some noise.
Am I being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah. He's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian just wanted to see anyone else. Piss off!
That's the one. Because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian.
Hey, Manuel Kant was a real pissant who was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. PNG now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
did I do that?
You're insane!
There is a reason why you had Mr. George Wallace, who says the new Mr. Vegas, because here's the thing. He's the wannabe, because there is only one Mr. Vegas, and that is Al Pacino himself. I mean, this is dead ringer for Al Pacino. Al Pacino wishes he looked like Scott McKain. But we have the Mr. Vegas, an all-around rock star, Hall of Fame speaker, nice guy and friend, Al McKain Pacino Scott. And he's going to be in the studio. He's hanging out in the green room right now with his purple and brown M&Ms. For some reason, those are the color M&Ms he wants, and that is what he will get, because he gets what he wants. You can't always get what you want, but when you try sometime, you might find you get on Joseph Jaffe is not famous. Well, welcome to the show. This is the show that is free to all qualified individuals, which is 8 billion of you when last I checked. 8 billion people are searching for the show. The only problem is they don't know that the show exists yet. And that is why I need you to subscribe to the show and spread the word. bit.ly/subscribe to the show. And if you agree that I have a face for radio, we actually do a beautiful first audio only session, the Collective Cafe, Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, in Discord, on Zoom. If you really want to listen in with us, we manifest on Mondays, Thought Leadership Tuesdays, Wellness Wednesdays, live book reads on Thursdays. We're doing Happier at the moment. And what a great book. The Question of Questions. How do you achieve fulfilling, sustaining happiness? Is it possible? Hopefully it is. And then we do open mic sessions on Friday. Just a couple of sessions that we've been doing lately. This is one that I loved. It's a quote that I heard, which is capture the wind no matter which direction it's blowing. We always talk about headwinds and tailwinds, but what if you actually recognize that wind itself is such an incredible source of power and energy? Capture it regardless of which way it's blowing and use it to your advantage. And then, of course, happier, the question of questions. How do we find the happy quadrant? Which, spoiler alert, is all about loving and living and enjoying the journey, but with a purpose in mind. So it is both present and future tense or future state based. I've really enjoyed these sessions. And if you want to even listen to these sessions, you can just subscribe to a podcast version, bit.ly/collective cafe to go. Start your day off on the right foot, on the front foot. No matter whether you're getting the kids ready for school, whether you are on the treadmill walking the dog, or just commuting into the big bad city, we got you. We got your back. We got your ear holes. So come and join us. But now I'd like you to join me when I talk about a seated soliloquy, a monologue in which I homage, is that a verb? When I homage Mr. McKain, because in his new book, something kind of caught my eye, and it really was what I call personal pride. If I understood him correctly, and I might not have because I'm not the smartest of people, I got this message that actually says, if you are a frontline worker, if you are an employee of a company, don't wait for the company to come to you. Don't wait for their culture to finally trickle down to you. You take the initiative. You stand up. You set the tone. You set an example. Because when you take pride in yourself, when you take personal pride, personal responsibility, it becomes somewhat infectious. Maybe you are the catalyst. You are the spark that creates this customer experience, this customer energy, this customer obsession that actually transforms yourself, the people around you, your customers' lives, your department, your entire company, hell, even an industry. Personal pride, everything begins with you. And it is based on, and we'll discuss this soon enough, this challenge that on any given day, two employees at one company can deliver two polar opposite experiences to a customer. And that is not consistent. And that is not, at the end of the day, what a brand is about, what a brand stands for. It is about consistency. It's not necessarily over-promising and under-delivering, God forbid, and it's not about under-promising and over-delivering, although surprise and delight is important. It is about consistency. Say what you do what you say. Certainly, everything begins at the top: culture, North Star, vision, mission. But what about the exact opposite? What about the bottom up? What about everything begins with one human, one individual, one smile, one personality, one person who woke up on the right side of the bed and decided to make a difference, decided that their story would maybe be immortalized and written in, I don't know, Scott McKain's new book, rather be written in his book than in Joseph Jaffe's book, because I am coming for you. I have a particular set of skills and a funny accent. But now, someone who doesn't have a funny accent is Mr. Scott McKain. And, you know, I said, give me a bio, Scott, just an update. And he said to me, you know, we're friends. I'd rather you just speak from the heart. And I decided to do both. But first, please watch this.
At the intersection of innovation, technology, and the customer experience, that's where you find distinction.
From the customer's perspective, how have you defined what makes you different? And clarity is so hard for organizations. It's so difficult for brands for this fundamental reason. You not only have to define what you are very precisely, you also have to have the courage to say, this is what we are not. Well, I'm going to suggest it simply means that great isn't good enough to grow in today's changing marketplace. Man, you've been great, but now you have to take it to a better standard, because change is all around us. So if what you're doing today is what you did yesterday, it's a recipe for failure in today's world. Your brand is not a promise. Your brand is that conversation that customers have about the congruency between the promise your marketing makes and the performance that your frontline delivers.
The customers that we attract will always be more profitable than the customers we've had to pursue. So how, through the experience that we create, both in sales and in how we serve them, how do we make that attractive to customers so we create marketplace distinction? That's what my work is about.
Hi, I'm Scott McKain. I'm the author of the book Iconic and a professional speaker. You know, my favorite thing about what I get a chance to do is that you can make an impact on an organization. There are companies and leaders that correspond with me constantly that they've taken some of the advice from my books and my speeches and employ that in their organization, and they have lower turnover in employees and higher profitability. So the opportunity to make a contribution is really the best part of what I get a chance to do.
Think of Indiana Jones. When I said that, did you think of him? Probably not. Did you think of him? Probably not. But technically, Indiana Jones is an intellectual property company. Until recently, it was owned equally, 50-50, by Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. They signed the contracts. They produced the movies. They signed the deals. They owned Indiana Jones. Yet when I said think of Indiana Jones, you thought of the employee who created the experience for you. When I have an experience with your brand, I'm not thinking about a CEO or a board of directors at the home office. I'm thinking about the person at the call center or the person in front of me. I'm thinking about the individual who created that experience for me. It means that every member of your team is responsible for this.
Okay, so just hold on. With full disclosure, I'm looking at the clip and I'm like, I'm going to find about a minute or so of the clip. And then I see the whole Indiana Jones thing. First of all, I wanted people to see you in action. I wanted them to see you in action because, you know, you are the real deal. You are Mr. Vegas. But also that Indiana Jones analogy is brilliant. The concept of him as the employee, as the frontline employee. What a great way to make that point. Anyway, welcome back to the show. Scott, you are on your way to your smoking jacket, 5 appearances on the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm counting down. I'm holding out for that. That's so great. I'm doing terrific, Joseph. It's so great, as always, my friend, to be with you. And I was trying to think of some great Al Pacino line that I could throw in there to start.
Say hello to my little customer service book.
Hello. I like that. He was here in Vegas, by the way. I went to see him. He did just an interview. He walked out on stage with a local, movie critic, and they just sat for an hour and a half and talked. And Patricia Fripp, a wonderful speaker and a longtime friend, and I went, and it was just it was mesmerizing. It was just absolutely amazing. So.
Hey. I want to debut something that I haven't actually tried before. So, I figured it would be perfect. Let's see if this works. So this is what's called a video background. And for the first time, StreamYard allows you to. So this is obviously your background as well. So this is very meta. You have my background behind you, and I have your background behind me. And, I just wanted to one-up you. That's all.
Oh, you've done it. That I didn't know it would do this.
Isn't that cool?
See, not only am I a guest, I'm being educated simultaneously, just like the rest of the audience. It's great, Joseph. I love
it. So this idea, let's just chat briefly about it. Indiana Jones as a frontline employee. I mean, it really makes the case. Does that, to me, that lands? Does that land with executives when they suddenly kind of realize that maybe we're looking at the whole thing kind of wrong when we think about the top down versus the bottom up approach?
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the things on this video that you showed that people will say, will you make certain to tell that story, make certain you use the Indiana Jones analogy, because it hits. And it's true. I mean, at the end of the day, there are very few companies that you think of the CEO because of the product. Yeah, sure. I mean, you think of Steve Jobs still occasionally with Apple. You might think of Elon if you're driving a Tesla, but there are very, very few of the companies that we interact with on a daily basis that we, in many cases, even know who the leaders are. But we certainly know, when I fill my car up with gasoline, I can't tell you off the top of my head, who the CEO is of Shell, but I can tell you that the clerk, when I go in and buy a cup of coffee, is really friendly. And that's why I keep going back. It's one of those things that we don't think about, but we need to focus on. And by the way, it sounds like a plug. I don't mean it that way, but the reason for this latest book, The Ultimate Customer Experience, is because Jonathan Merck, the CEO and publisher of Forefront Books, came to me and he said, Scott, everything you've written has been for leadership. It's been for, managers, entrepreneurs, leaders, owners. You haven't written anything that they would hand to their frontline people. And that's what we really need, is something that they could provide to their frontline people as a way to talk about the experience that they're creating for customers. And the research on it, Joseph, was really fascinating to me because, some of the things that folks, our age take for granted that we were taught have not been taught to Gen Z. And it's not a criticism of the, of the generation at all. You don't know what you don't know. But the things like taking personal responsibility or owning the customer's problem, things that we kind of have taken for granted for so long, now organizations are realizing they need to be educating their front line about. And hopefully this book can be a small part of that process.
So why do you think actually that is the case, that Gen Z is not being educated about these, shall we call them, fundamental principles and practices about business? I wouldn't even say customer engagement, just business, doing business the right way.
I think there's more than one answer to that. I think this is part of it. We spend so much time with communicating via our devices that we haven't really helped people understand the dynamics of interpersonal communication, especially when things go wrong. My wife recently was stranded at O'Hare, and because I had status with the airline, she asked if I would call and see about how this was going to be handled, because I could get through more quickly on the phone. And so I did, and I told her what the situation was going to be, but that she still had to talk to a gate agent. And when the gate agent said that what they had told me on the phone was impossible, she's trying to explain to this young gate agent, well, that's not the information my husband, who is a diamond flyer, had received. And because she disagreed with that person, and she said, could I have your name so that we could get this straightened out? And the gal covered her name tag and said, I'm going to call the police. It was just a disagreement. It wasn't, and if you know my wife, it would not be, aggressive, assertive, anything like that. But this young person hadn't been educated in the interpersonal aspect of how to deal with a customer having a disagreement, a problem.
So I would have just said, sure, my name's Scott McKain. I mean,
yeah, really. That got her kicked out immediately. They could have called the cops on that. And so that's part of it. I think the other part is my great friend Jason Dorsey is probably the world's leading researcher on generational aspects, and particularly his new book about Gen Z. And Jason and I were on a program recently for Stellantis, the Chrysler company, and he said, fill in the blank. There's 1,500 people in the audience. He said, fill in the blank. This generation is very, and everybody shouted, entitled. And then Jason paused, and it was beautiful. He said, by the way, who entitled them? You. It's the parents that have entitled. And so, part of it's the devices, part of it's the culture, part of it is that we have not taught people how to deal with disagreements and with other, with other people.
Or actually look people in the eye and actually make eye contact when we're talking, instead of looking away or down or on the phone.
On the phone while you're doing it. Exactly. And so that's part of it. We've got to be more engaging. We've got to teach people this. And at the end of the day, and we've realized this for a long time about different aspects, at the end of the day, if the workforce hasn't been educated in that, then the organizations have the obligation and the responsibility to educate them, because now there's a vested interest. How is this person taking care of our customer?
And is
And
there? I was going to say, is so. I hear a couple of failings, but also maybe some things that we've overlooked, and we haven't realized something that has caught up to us. So one of them is, I think about the way the world works now. This rush to automation and dehumanizing the whole experience. Uh, Budgets that have been cut in terms of training and development.
Yeah.
And then there's just this cultural realization that the new generation of workforce and customer facing workers don't actually know how to communicate, period.
exactly right. I grew up in rural America, and my family owned the grocery store in our small town, but we also had a small farm. And there was a line that every farmer has heard about: you can't eat your seed corn. What that basically means is that if you're developing corn, if you're growing corn, what you're going to plant for next year's crop can't be consumed, or else there is no crop next year. And that popped into my head when you mentioned about the cuts and reductions in training and education budgets, because what these organizations are doing is eating their seed corn. They aren't investing in what will be their crop of profitability in the future. We can't do that. And I get that it's an easy place where you don't see the impact of the cut immediately, but I promise you the customers see it over the long term. And that is something that, it's no coincidence that when we talk about the companies that have the greatest customer experience, but also the greatest customer retention, referrals, loyalty, and profitability, it's always the companies that are investing the most in the training and development of their people.
It's always.
It's just such a no-brainer. I wrote a thing a while back, Joseph, about you can go to medical school, you can become a doctor, you can even choose a specialty and become a dermatologist, become a brain surgeon, and never take a single course at many medical schools on bedside manner, the patient experience. You can get an MBA without a single course on communication with internal and external customers. Is an MBA relevant if it doesn't teach how to get along and how to lead and how to serve? I don't know. I don't think so. So we've got to get back to this. A million years ago, John Nesbitt wrote in the book Megatrends, the more we become high tech, the more we will desire high touch. And I think that prophecy is playing out in multiples right now. And we're seeing that in so many organizations. You and I see it as customers every day.
Well, it actually, the high tech, high touch, there is an Easter egg in that quote, because the high touch becomes the antidote or the solution or the differentiation. It's almost telling us, it's right in front of our faces. If you want to succeed in an increasingly noisy, crowded, cluttered marketplace that is favoring automation and cost reduction over intimacy and relationship, then high touch is the way to do it. Yeah. And yet we don't see that. We see very few companies actually doubling down on the touch versus the tech component.
My buddy Ford Sakes has a great line too about the future, because when people say to him, and I see this rush to AI because, gosh, maybe that'll help us cut people and cut budgets. And Ford says companies are soon going to find out that people won't lose their jobs to AI, but companies will lose because they won't have people that understand how to leverage AI. And I love what he's saying there, because I wrote in a book 5-6 years ago that they call it artificial intelligence, but there's no such thing as artificial wisdom. And it's only the human touch that provides that. And so with all the new technologies coming as well, I think this becomes so much more incumbent upon organizations is how do we create the personal touch for people? How do we deliver this ultimate customer experience in a way that's so compelling that we ensure repeat business from our customers and we ensure the word of mouth that we've said forever is simply the best form of marketing.
I
And
think
it's the right thing to do too. I mean, we talk about all these reasons in terms of profitability, in terms of all this, but good grief, it's just the right thing to do. Is to care about our customers and our team, to care about all of this. It just seems like that's the calling that separates the winners from the losers, the distinctive from the average.
Look, we're here discussing a different book, but I can see, because I can predict the future, that your next book is going to be called Artificial Wisdom. I love that.
Oh, you like that? Oh, great.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
looking forward to
I predict this is the place where best-selling books are
that.
born.
I'm writing that down right now.
Artificial wisdom. It's a beautiful concept because ultimately what it says is this marriage or finding the intersection or the disconnection between these two seemingly disparate or polar opposite worlds or extremes, which is automation, the rise of the machine versus the demise of the human. And this one says you can't automate intimacy, or maybe we'll be able to teach lessons and experience to a machine, but wisdom is something different. Wisdom is connected with resilience. Resilience is connected with grit. There's a degree of pain. There's a degree of imperfection. And I'm sure machines will be taught to be imperfect as well. But until that happens, human beings still carry a bit of magic pixie dust.
Yeah, well said. When you said that, I was thinking of, you've certainly been through some personal trials and tribulations. I've had my share in the past as well, and I think it provides you with this depth of insight. I mean, at the end of the day, we have all had, and most of us watching this and listening to this have had that moment where the two alternatives were either stay down or get up. And there is something about making the decision to get up and soldier on that gives us a depth of insight and wisdom that would not have been possible had it not been for that tragedy, that difficulty, that challenge. And you can't teach that. You can't program that with ones and zeros. It is something that's uniquely human. And that's what we have to remember as well. Harvard wrote a while back that the fundamental change in B2B relationships, business to business, is they're becoming more like B2C, business to consumer. And what the report was saying is, even if you're selling widgets to a corporation, you're still having human personal interaction. And the customers more than ever before are blending the experiences that they have. In other words, if they take great care of me at my Lexus dealership, know my name, send me a birthday card, that kind of thing, then why wouldn't the company that I'm dealing with to buy $1 million worth of widgets, know my name and create this experience for me? So we're making even the B2B relationships that have traditionally been thought of, by the way, that jump cut here, but I got to say, the line that bothers me the most is when people say, it's not personal, it's business. Because what more do we want as any organization than for our customers and our employees to take things personally? Of course we want that. We want our employees to feel like a member of a team, like they have a personal commitment to the people that they work with and a personal commitment to the organization. And then we're going to say, it's just business, it's not personal. It's always personal. It's always personal.
I completely agree. And actually, that's why the soliloquy was called Personal Pride. This is actually the quote that I found for you from a longtime guest and friend of the show, Eleanor Roosevelt. Remember always that you not only have the right to be an individual, you have an obligation to be one. And I think this idea of, taking it personal is also personal pride, personal responsibility, but it all begins with this idea of recognizing who you are and what your role is in this giant or bigger picture or machine. And no matter how small or insignificant you think you are, I always used to say this: you go into a McDonald's and the cashier sneers at you because they had a bad day, because they woke up on the wrong side of the bed, because their boyfriend or girlfriend dumped them. That suddenly is the brand. They are McDonald's to you, and all the amount of Super Bowl advertising in the world is not going to be able to repair that rift that came from that personal, minimum wage employee interaction with you.
Exactly right. You reminded me again, and you reminded me of something you said earlier. Um, I had a speech coach that I worked with. I've got a different one now because the one I worked with passed away. But his name was Ron Arden, and he had speech coached Tony Robbins. He'd speech coached, Brian Tracy and Ken Blanchard and some of the real, heavyweights in the business. And the fact that he even accepted me to work with him and be coached with him was a huge thing for me. And he did this out of his home in San Diego. So I go to San Diego. He asked for video ahead of time so he could watch my video. And this is many, many years ago. But, I'm late 30s at the time, mid to late 30s. And I go in and he said, "So Scott, when you speak, tell me more about where this comes from." And proudly I said to him, "Ron, it's important to me. I speak from the heart." And he rolled his eyes and said, "Oh, good Lord, not another one." I'm like, what do you mean by that? Isn't that a good thing? And he said, "Well, let's say that right before you go on stage, you look down at your phone and there's an emergency text from your wife, and they've just taken a child to the hospital, to the emergency room. Your name is called and you're about to walk on stage. You speak from the heart?" Or let's say that you get an email the morning of the presentation, and your business partner has embezzled all the funds out of your bank account. Okay, now walk on stage and speak from the heart. He said, your goal is to write from the heart and to speak from your skill. Because speaking from your skill means that you are delivering the best that you can be, because what the content is coming from your heart. The content is what you believe in and what you're passionate about, but you develop the skill to deliver it in a manner that is not dependent on what your mood is that morning, whether you've got a sinus headache or you're on top of the world. And that was life-changing for me. And I think that same principle is what you're talking about, is that if that person at McDonald's has had a bad day, they need to be educated and coached that you deliver for the customer based on your skill, not on what your current mood happens to be.
Especially if they're Gen Z. Hey, listen, I've just realized I've got a new business. I'm about to do a live pivot, which is I'm going to start charging my guests, except for you because you're a friend, for coming up with their next book title. Because let me tell you, after you've now written, now I've got the next new book for you. And in all seriousness, I mean, in terms of speech coaching, which I know you do, right from the heart, speak from your skill. That is an absolute. That's brilliant. I love it. What a great soundbite. And I was thinking to myself, this is the kind of thing where you almost want to get on stage and say, you know what? I'm here and I'm talking to you about X, Y, or Z, but I got to tell you, I just got, just hold on. Let me do this properly for you so that you can appreciate. I just got a email from my partner who embezzled about $150 million from the business. And I'm, anyway, I'm here to talk to you about AI.
Yeah, exactly. And now we speech on integrity.
No, but you know what I mean? I mean, it is, but certainly, no, I get it, and uh, it's just great. It really speaks to me because at the end of the day, we talk about. I would say too, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I speak from my heart, but they just want to see. They just want to see emotion. They want to see
Yeah.
emotion. It doesn't have to be like crazy emotion, but it's like this is, again, Scott. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
We got to get people to care. Otherwise, we're all dead on arrival.
Could not agree with you more. And it is a funny combination. I posted the other day I what Simon Sinek has talked about in terms of the why. I think is critical for how we how we operate individually. But we can never forget that customers buy our how. And if I take my car into the shop to be repaired and they don't fix it properly, I don't go, oh, but the great thing is they've got a wonderful why. No, I go, hey, I brought my car in to be fixed, and you need to fix my car. I don't give a darn about your why until I know as a customer that you can deliver the how.
Mm,
So it seems to me that we're moving into this new phase of management and leadership, which is where the astute leader helps organize the individual's why into the performance of a collective how.
mm.
And your why may be very different from mine, but if we can find the ways as leaders to connect that with getting the how right for customers, now we're going to have an extraordinary organization because the why means we care and the how means we execute. And customers are really looking for both.
I'm going to do a little bit of a build there for you, which is the why gets the customer into the store, the how keeps them there,
Yeah.
and the who keeps them coming back for more.
Ooh, I like that.
How about that one?
We could even do kind of an Abbott and Costello routine
telling you.
about it.
I'm telling
How?
you.
No, that's second. Who? That's on
Yeah,
first.
exactly. Exactly. I'm seeing maybe the McKain Jaffe roadshow here. Can we do
I
it?
like that. Hey, I like that. We need the silk tour jackets, and the big bus to take us around. That would be perfect.
All right. So now I have to tell you that I'm having such a wonderful conversation with you, which is what I knew we would. But it's time to play two truths and a lie. A little bit of a interlude. Actually, what I realized that is not what I want. You see, I got so excited that this is why I need a virtual assistant. God help me. This is what I wanted.
Two truths and a lie. Can you guess which is which? Tune and lean and don't you dare miss a pitch. It's Joseph Jaff, not famous, but you'll see.
A little AI generated intro.
We twist, we turn in search of reality.
All right, two truths and a lie. Can you tell which is which? This is a man who speaks from the heart and he lies from the heart
From skill.
as well. But two of these are true. One of them is a lie. Which one is the lie? I have absolutely no idea, which is a lie in of itself. But if you can figure it out, just go to bit.ly/2T1L_Scott McKain. And who knows, there might even be some goodies and Easter eggs hiding for you. So, Scott, we sent our reporters into the field, and we actually found out that, believe it or not, this is one of my better ones, by the way.
Oh, that is fabulous.
Isn't that great?
I got to get a screenshot of that.
That is a
That's too
keeper.
good.
You have met and conversed with 5, count 'em, U.S. presidents. Tell us a little bit about that. And apparently, I even heard that Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is not one of the 5 U.S. presidents, invited you to the White House,
Yeah.
where you actually gave a speech in front of a U.S. president, which, of course, could be true or not. But tell us about this and which 5 U.S. presidents.
The first one was Jimmy Carter. I was a student officer, national officer of a student organization, and he was the speaker at one of our sessions. And so I had the chance to meet and spend some time with President Carter. Also, because of that experience, his predecessor or a predecessor of him in the office, Gerald Ford, was the first president I met at the White House. So I had a conversation with Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan. I got to be friends with the governor of Indiana at the time, Otis Bowen, and he invited me to meet President Reagan, then candidate Reagan, President Reagan. And what an engaging, remarkable person that turned out to be. Then President Bush, the father, was the one at the White House through the Arnold Schwarzenegger experience. And then I was at an Indy 500 small party, and come to find out, the person that was hosting the party, I didn't realize, was close personal friends with Bill Clinton. And there were about 30 of us at the party, and Bill Clinton spent about 3 hours with us at the party, and was just incredibly charismatic and fascinating. So I've been fortunate. I've met and conversed at length with presidents on both sides of the aisle, and found them all to be extraordinarily fascinating people.
Well, it would have been great had they bought a copy of your cookbook, because apparently, and I did not know this, you are also a secret best-selling cookbook author. And I did a little bit of digging, and apparently this cookbook features recipes for unique and distinctive dishes inspired by your travels around the world. And might I add, you've traveled to all 50 states, which is also remarkable. So I did not know you were a foodie.
Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I've got 3 other speaker pals. We call ourselves the Bourbonaires. And twice a year, we fly somewhere and meet and drink bourbon and eat at local establishments. And in a couple of weeks, we're all going to New Orleans. But I've spoken in all 50 states and currently 38 countries. And with all the travel and all the different types of cuisine and all the different types of food. And the other thing I always challenge myself to do is to, get out of the hotel, get away from the chains, and try to savor local cuisine. I put something together where I could have the best of food when I got back home. So I loved collecting recipes and loved collecting, ideas for dishes. And the other thing I tried to add to it was, it's really hard to eat healthy on the road. And I tried to think about what could you do to have the dishes that you enjoy on the road at home, but also add a little bit more of a healthy element to it.
Well, let me ask you a question. Are any of these any of these recipes, do they have goat milk in it? Because apparently you were victorious in a goat milking contest at the Indiana State Fair, but you beat David Letterman.
Yeah.
Indiana's favorite son.
You bet. Well, and I'm from Indiana. That's kind of how it took place, is that in front of the grandstand on Farmers Day at the Indiana State Fair, they had a goat milking competition. And by the way, that's where goat cheese comes from, which is in some of the dishes in the cookbook. But they had a goat milking competition, and I ended up winning the goat milking competition because while Dave Letterman, is from Indiana, this was not a part of his early youth experience where it was for me. So that was an incredible experience to do that and to win that.
All right, so go and vote. Don't cheat, and remember, one lucky winner will win $1 million, or not. Or not.
Or maybe a book.
Or maybe a book. I mean, I would do it for the book, especially if you signed it.
You may earn $1 million because you apply what's in this book.
And
it's not a promise. That's a possibility.
That is a threat.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about the book. And I love the background. Let's just paint your entire world with ultimate customer experience. I talk about customer obsession. What is ultimate? Just tell us what you want to tell us about this book, and then we're going to get into these 5. Well, tell us.
Well, as I've looked at the customer experience for a number of years, and I started talking about this, believe it or not, in the 1980s, about the ultimate customer experience, because when I was beginning my business as a speaker, author, consultant, coach, I had the privilege of I had the greatest side hustle in the world. And this is not two truths and a lie. This is the truth. I did movie reviews and was syndicated to about 100 television stations across the United States and a few outside. Um, and it meant I got to interview celebrities as part of that. And the aha for me is they were creating an experience for the audience, and that same metaphor could work with the experience that we create for our customers. And so my first book was All Business is Show Business. I said it's not about customer service as much as it's about the customer experience. And it was met with a resounding meh. It was that people just weren't thinking about the experience at that time. And I've continued to be fascinated by it. And it's somewhat akin to the old Maya Angelou quote that's so wonderful, that people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember forever how you made them feel. And that's so true with our customers. And so the ultimate experience differs because different customers define the experience uniquely. It differs for what the organization is. I mean, the example, I didn't use it in the book, but the example that I use in speeches, Joseph, is, we always say, hey, smile and be enthusiastic and friendly with your customer. Well, really? If you're running a funeral home, that's what you want? Hey, so sorry about your aunt. We're really glad that you're here. I mean, that's not what we want. It has to be specific and unique to whatever your product or service might be. And it has to be congruent with the experience that your customers desire. But
this idea, I mean, I would imagine it goes one step further than that, which is even in the funeral home, the ultimate custom experience might differ from customer to customer, because let's just ride with the from the sublime to the ridiculous. Let's assume there is a customer. There is a what's the word? A customer. I'm thinking what's the term? A mourner. What is a customer goes to the patient, a victim? I don't know. But a mourner who actually is dealing with the loss through humor and making jokes, or just needing something different.
Yeah.
In that particular case, maybe not the smile, but something slightly, off the off the beaten path. The ability to say, we've got the playbook, we've got the guidelines, we've got the consistency,
Yes.
but now's time for that exception. And I always say, just like, who wants to be satisfactory in customer satisfaction? But the word, exception is in the word exceptional. So surely ultimate customer experience can in fact not only differ from company to company, but even intra-company, inside the company.
So true. I mean, so true. And customers are each, as you well know, customers are each facing their own unique and individual challenges. They each have their own wants and needs, and how we respond to that is incredibly important. I mean, it's what makes all the difference in the world for customers. So I tried to break down into 5 things that every employer would want to make certain that their frontline knows, so that regardless of whether it's a funeral home or whether it is, McDonald's or a car repair shop, that it's important. So you have one of the 5.
By the way, Scott, wouldn't it be great if I had them all? Wouldn't it be great?
Oh, there you go.
That I created these for you, my friend.
You are the best. I mean, just the absolute best.
So let's walk through them very briefly. Don't make it right, get it right.
Yeah, no customer in the world says, hey, it's okay to mess it up the first couple of times as long as you get it right in the end. No, we don't want you to make it right. Customers want you to get it right. If I'm driving through the restaurant and I order a chicken sandwich, don't make me get back in line and give you the cheeseburger back to get the chicken sandwich order the first time. Don't make it right, get it right. And so organizations and the people that work for them need to be obsessed with making certain that we fulfill this to begin with. Because if this doesn't happen, then all of our other efforts really don't matter that much. But as I say in the book, we're all human. There will be times that we don't make it right, that we don't get it right. So in those cases, what we need to do is not only make it right, but do it in a manner that shows that we tried to get it right, something happened, we take responsibility for that, and we're going to serve the customer. Yeah, part of the challenge is, and I talked about this in the previous book, Iconic, is that when we don't get it right, typically what we do is placate the customer. Hey, dessert's on me. Sorry, your meal was slow and cold. I'll pick up a drink or I'll pick up dessert. But we don't fix the process that created the problem in the first place. So leaders have to do everything they can to make certain that we're getting it right for the customers. And part of that gets back to what you talked about earlier, Joseph. If you're cutting training budgets, if you're not teaching frontline people on what it takes to get it right, you're going to spend a lot of time making it right, which is not what customers want. So get obsessed about getting it right and doing it right the first time so that we don't have to make it right.
And if you mess up, and sometimes that happens, let's face it, what customers, I guess, are really looking for is they're looking for the Sunday on the house, but actually they're looking to know that you are serious about fixing it. And to me, that also bleeds into the second point, which is make a great impression. One of the things I always say, Scott, is you don't get a second chance to make a great first impression. You do get a second chance to make a great second impression,
Yes.
especially if you're fixing the process. What do you mean by make a great impression?
Well, it dovetails perfectly with what you're saying, Joseph, and that is that, you know, we spend a lot of money and think a lot about what's the initial impression that we're going to make, not realizing that every single impression is absolutely critical. I had an appointment at a specialist here not long ago for a checkup, and I go in and I love this doctor. He's fabulous. He's personable. He's an extraordinary doctor. And I go in, and the gal at the front desk is behind a window, and as she's taking a drink from her big gulp, she slides the window open, looks up, and goes, "Help you?" What she failed to recognize, and what the wonderful doctor failed to educate her on, is that she is the executive vice president of impressions, of initial impressions, right? I mean, it's her job to create a great initial impression when you walk into that office. And you know, it's funny in that we don't think enough about the impressions that are created. Tammy and I just got home from Hawaii, and while we were there, we took the little tour of timeshares at the resort in Hawaii where we were staying, just to check it out. And you know, it was really interesting because when we walked in, and there's this bigger room where you wait for your, you know, person who's going to give you the pitch to come out. We noticed that 3 of the bulbs in the chandelier were burned out. And I realized that it may not be a corollary, but for both of us, our initial thing was, if they're not taking care of their own chandelier, how are they taking care of the units in the property that we're looking at buying? If they can't replace a light bulb, what else are they not doing? And we don't think often enough about all of the things that make an impression on customers. Now, they can turn around and say, hey, changing a light bulb has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of the construction and what we do in our units. We take care of our units first. We don't take care of the, I mean, but they don't realize the impression that it makes on a customer. And so part of what's inherent in this is looking through the customer's eyes.
Right. And it's the small stuff, right? In this case, truly. Sweat the small stuff. The third is serve with empathy.
It gets back to what you said earlier, Joseph. You know, it's showing through our actions that we relate and that we care. You know, you can't. Every customer wants you to either fulfill some of their needs or solve some of their problems. But if we don't relate to those needs and relate to those problems, how in the world can we serve them in the manner that they desire? So serving with empathy, showing that they care. You know, a few years back, I tell this story in speeches. A few years back, I was in a wreck involving I was driving a Hertz rental car. And now I've got to call Hertz and tell them I've crashed their car. And when I called, the woman that answered, the first thing she said is, "Mr. McKain, are you okay?" And when I explained I'm shook up, but I'm physically fine, but I've wrecked their car, she said, "Hertz can always get another car. We can never get another Mr. McKain." Whoa. Right? And I'm a Hertz customer for life at this point because she served me with empathy to such a degree that
Well, there's
I'm
only one. There's only one McKain, Mr. McKain, because there's only one Mr. Vegas, at least when it comes to speaking.
look out Wayne Newton, right?
You know, I'll tell you. I'll tell you that. And I forgot I was going to upload this little video. I was driving into a Starbucks drive-through the other day, and I overheard the I guess the person taking the order singing "Happy Birthday" to the customer in his car. And I just took too long, and eventually I got out my phone and I just got the "Happy to you." I think I got the "birthday to you." And I heard him, and I think he was turning 64, and he said something like, "Oh, that was just the most incredible thing ever. I wish I'd recorded that." And as he pulled up to the window, I jumped out my car and I said, "Actually, I recorded that, just the end of it," and I airdropped it to him. And
Very cool.
but I caught it.
Yeah.
I wish I just caught a few more seconds of it, but it was just that small little gesture of empathy. It made his day. It made his day.
Isn't it fascinating too? I mean, this is one thing that fascinates me as I work with organizations, is they think about how much, what's the return on investment? What do we need to spend to create these systems and to do all that? And it costs Starbucks absolutely nothing for that person to sing happy birthday. And it made a
Totally.
more significant impact on that customer than a 2% better cup.
Exactly. Or I always say, don't pay for attention, pay attention.
Yeah.
All right, we've got just a few moments left,
Sure.
and there are two more, and I want to make sure we touch on them. One is, I suppose we're just everything just feeds into the next point, right?
Right.
Connect
That's the
with
goal.
emotion.
Yeah. And it, again, as I said earlier, they won't remember the Maya Angelou quote. They won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And how does it feel to do business with you and your organization? How does it feel to do business with your frontline people? Are you focusing enough on that? Whether it's B2B or B2C, whatever it might be, we want to know that you've connected emotionally. And it gets back to what we said earlier about you can't say it's not personal, it's just business. Well, the businesses that are most profitable and the most successful are the ones that have great personal connections with their internal and their external customers as well.
It's funny because the last one is take personal responsibility. It comes back to my soliloquy. What a great way to wrap this up. It comes back to that Eleanor Roosevelt quote. But I do see, and I don't know if this was intentional, but when we say, and when you say, take personal responsibility, I think that in context and in combination with it's not personal, it's business. What we are saying, this is not take business responsibility.
Right.
It's take personal responsibility and also take it personally. I think those two together make for this, this is the way to bring it home.
Well, and your Starbucks example is a perfect point there, because for that person that working at Starbucks to take business responsibility means that she fills the cup to the proper spot. She delivers the right drink that the customer ordered. The drink is prepared accurately and responsibly, and it's delivered promptly. That's taking business responsibility. But when he or she took personal responsibility to sing, now that made all the difference in the world. Oh, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
No, you see, this is what I did. I tried to get too cheeky right at the end to just what I wanted to do was that. What I
There
did
we go.
was starting to play your intro again. But you know what? Again, look, human beings are flawed. We are not perfect. We make mistakes. It's what we do about them that counts. You know, someone really smart once upon a time said to me, don't make it right, get it right. Jaffe, you amateur.
Well, but when we have to make it right, show that we care. And that's what you just did. So there you see, you handled it perfectly.
Look, the book is called, I mean, first of all, it's about damn time that you get off your you know what and get it right. Get it right. This is the only thing that is preventing us from being consumed by the machines. The book is called The book is called The Ultimate Customer Experience, and buy it. 5 steps everyone, and I mean everyone, must know to excite your customers, engage your colleagues, and enjoy your work. I do want to just make a little distinction here. Note, please, that this is not just customer experience. It's also employee experience. It is, you know, as important. And then there is a third, the unsung hero. If you do both, and also by doing both, you might even just love what you do and enjoy your work and not be so miserable in your day-to-day. Surprise, surprise, revelation of revelations. 30 seconds more, actually take 60 seconds more. Mr. McKain, talk about the power of enjoying your work.
Yeah, you know, and as you saw in the book, Joseph, I was going to make that the 6th aspect of this. And then I realized that really enjoying your work is the sum of what happens when you execute these other 5. And we look, do we perform better when we're happy or when we're frustrated and upset? Of course we're better. Of course we're more productive. Of course it's better when we bring that joy and that engagement and that depth of meaning to our work. So when we do these things, when we take personal responsibility, and we connect with emotion, and we serve with empathy, and we get it right for the customer, when we do all these things, then work and life becomes more enjoyable for our customers. And then we reflect that. It becomes more enjoyable for us as well.
Amen. I've been getting the crowd, as you can see in the background, goes wild. If you'd like to find out more about how to work with Scott, he's doing so many things like communication, speech coaching, consulting, and professional speaking. He is Mr. Vegas for a reason. He is in the Hall of Fame for a reason. Please just visit him at scottmckain.com or Scott McKain, wherever social media handles are found and books are sold. George Wallace is not Mr. Vegas, nor is Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
Oh, that's the coolest ever right there. I love that.
Almost as cool as you, Scott.
Oh,
everyone.
Man, that trumps me incredibly. I love that.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.